Good afternoon. As we begin the next portion of our course and take a look at vocabulary development, I just wanted to make a few introductory comments to go along with a PowerPoint that you'll find this week under resources. As we take a 3-week look at just some best practices that have emerged in the last 10 to 15 years around vocabulary development. The first thing to do would be to ask and look at our own experiences as students thinking back with regard to vocabulary development. And if you think about that, typically a couple of things probably come to mind, at least for me. Often was asked to memorize long vocabulary lists in a unit and often expected to come in a one-time summative exam event and write out the rote definition, textbook definition of a word. So it was very much a memorize, regurgitate it out, move on, not necessarily anything that it would become a long-term part of my vocabulary. Another thing that I remember was being asked to spend week in and week out in a language arts class in vocabulary workbooks that would have 50 to 75 words a week, exercises, fill in the blank within, etc. Again, remember very much being trying to do that just for work completion, not because it was something that I was engaged in the word or learning how to use the word in different contexts, etc. So we want you to think about that as you look at the discussion post for this week, writing about those vocabulary experiences that you remember, and then we're going to compare it to a few best practice items that have emerged in recent years. 4 themes that you'll see in that PowerPoint that you'll find under resources this week. The first is the idea of picking an essential list of words to focus on throughout a unit, a semester, and a year, coming back to it often with the purpose of trying to build long-term retention and ability to apply the word in a variety of contexts, as opposed to just exposure and get through it, rote memorization, move on. Another focus that's emerged is to pay attention to academic vocabulary. For example, we've seen in our own school system regarding the state exam that we may have kids ready with particular mathematics skills in upper elementary, middle school, and then the wording on the test in a particular question throws the students off. We had issues one year with the word evaluate. Students may know full well how to solve multi-step equations, but if the question said evaluate the expression for y, students didn't understand what evaluate meant. So being explicit about that kind of vocabulary or any other vocabulary we see in our context that might be applicable and transferable to other courses. Also, exposing students to the concept of root words, roots that have base meaning that can be applied to a lot of contexts and can be an accelerator of word acquisition. One of the best examples I've ever heard of this is when it was explained to me, the word mortgage actually has its roots in French and was believed to be known. We all may have, if you don't rent, if you own a home, the vast majority of us have to go to a bank, ask for a loan, call it a mortgage, you pay back 15, 20, 30 years. The French called that a death payment because of how long those payments can be. And the root word mort, meaning death, in French, then if you think about other words in our modern English context and vernacular that have mort in it that are associated with death, mortician, mortuary. When you teach students those kinds of roots and their meaning, it allows for an acceleration of word acquisition to apply to a lot of different contexts. And then the idea of a more active, engaging instruction to work with a word, try to make it a part of the long-term vocabulary and retention of a student to use in other contexts or to use in different contexts within that subject area is also a point of emphasis. So over the next 3 weeks, a couple things that we're going to do, starting with the discussion this week around your own experiences with vocabulary in comparison to some of the research best practice pieces we're going to look at. We're going to look at a couple of processes to help you identify the best or essential list of words in your content area and look at it as a lean, important group of words I'm going to do things with over a long period of time, as opposed to just exposure, regurgitate, move on. We're going to look at a list of essential words by a national learning lab, the Marzano Learning Lab, and you're going to evaluate the list they came up with for they actually, every subject, grade level, they've come up with a list of essential words in that curriculum, and we're going to compare, and you're going to evaluate how good of a job you think they did on your content area. We are also going to review a list of root words that tend to have high leverage, ability to leverage and be transferred to other contexts. And then you'll be asked to do a lesson plan that's due March 27th, where you'll take these vocabulary concepts and put them into a lesson plan scenario. So just a little bit of a background on what we're going to try to focus on and do over the next 3 weeks with vocabulary development, and hope that we give you some things that will be helpful in your content areas as you move forward and try to find ways to get students engaged and learning at improved levels with their literacy development. Thank you.